Hi, everybody. It's Brian Powers back on Revolution Radio. Thank you for your patience. We've been gone a little while, but I'm back. We took a little break at the beginning of the year just to recharge the batteries and get some new shows together. I'm about to introduce Brian, who is a worker at Starbucks. He is organized in his own shop. He's organizing with places around the country, and they have had more and more success. It seems like, every couple of days now I see on the news or in my feed on Facebook or whatever, another Starbucks workers victory or some news coming out of the campaign. So they're hitting it hard, and it's really good to see some grassroots work out there. I want to take a minute to remind everybody that you can go to www.nj, that's like new journalism, njrevolutionradio.com, and you can make a donation. You can listen to all our work. Ida Vox reports are up there. Special episodes are up there. Check us out. And if you want to, you don't have to, but if you want to, you can make a donation. And if you want to, you don't have to, you can join our editorial board and start helping us put these shows together. This interview was set up by Pat, our brother there on the editorial board, working hard. I've been organizing with Pat since we were union brothers going back 15 years almost, and we have done several projects together, including the 15 Now campaign for minimum wage, and he's been helping me out, getting interviews, and being involved with Revolution Radio now. And I couldn't be more excited to work with a guy that I've worked with forever. And you know what? I'd probably like to work with you in the same way, because new ideas are great. And becoming a member of our editorial board is, it's how you do it. It's how you get involved, and it's how you help produce anti-capitalist media. I want to thank all the members of my editorial board because they helped put all these interviews together. But Pat stepped up, made the calls, made the contacts, got me in touch with a guy organizing at Starbucks. And so this is the interview. And there's kind of an echo in it, so I'm not all that happy about the quality of the audio on my end. I'm sorry about that. But it's still a great interview, so bear with the echo a little bit. I promise you I found the tech glitch. It won't happen again. You don't hear an echo now because I did fix it. So I am sorry about that, but it's a great interview with a guy doing a lot of grassroots work out there. Check us out, and don't forget, visit the website, www.njrevolutionradio.com. Make a donation. Reach out to us on Facebook or whatever. Get in touch if you want to be involved. I'll talk to you real soon. This is Brian Powers, and thanks for listening to Revolution Radio. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Revolution Radio again. It's back after a bit of a break, but we're really excited to be back with something that's pretty hot topic right now, and that is workers organizing at the Starbucks workplaces kind of around the country. And we're welcoming today with us Brian Murray, who's a Starbucks worker himself and also is involved in helping others organize. And of course, my good comrade, Pat Fahy, editorial board member, and just been a buddy of mine for, 12, 15 years now, since back in my first early union days. So welcome, guys, to Revolution Radio, and thanks for being here.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
Great to be here. Thanks, Brian.
So, Brian, let's get right into your history. Let's start off. Why did you start working at Starbucks? Why did you initially apply for a job? I'm assuming you're a barista there?
Yeah. So I'm a barista at Starbucks. I've been a barista at my current location since May last year. I applied to Starbucks. I have a background actually in social services, and the pay was lower than what I'm making currently at Starbucks, which is a whole other issue. But I was kind of pretty burnt out in social services and just wanted a job to kind of like kick around while I figured out what my next steps were. And, Starbucks paying, at least $1 more than what I was making in social services seemed like a good choice to kind of, just have something to keep me going while, I figure out next steps. And it was kind of how I ended up there.
About how many hours do you put in a week? Are you full-time, part-time? Or?
I'm down to part-time now with everything going on in the campaign. I think I was working about 35 to 38, before the campaign launched, and I'm kind of down as more and more stuff has been coming up outside of work. So,
right. If you don't mind me asking, about what are they paying you there at Starbucks?
Right now we just had another wage hike. obviously related to the union campaign. So I think I'm making a little bit over 16 now. I'll have to double check. I was making 15.98 before this wage increase. So
And so where in the country are you working? You're working out of upper state New York, right?
yep, Buffalo, New York. That's right.
Pretty expensive area to live.
Yeah, and it is. Yeah, and fast food industry wages, we're making about like the median wage in fast food. There's a lot of places that are paying, $17 an hour now to attract labor. So, we're not Starbucks isn't even the top one, at least in the Buffalo market. They're about like, upper medium.
Yeah, I've seen about the same here in Maine and in the New England area. So, wages have gone up, but I think that's in part because of the other stuff that you're doing that's more interesting than working at Starbucks, which is organizing unions. So, how did you start? Did you go in? Did you salt a little bit? Were you a pro-union guy that took the job and thought, or did you come to find out about the union after being employed with Starbucks?
Yeah, I found out in it about June last year, about kind of like our union effort. I'd been kind of like moved out to Buffalo, 4 or 5 months before June, and was just getting involved in like the activist scene, some DSA stuff, India Walton's campaign, and like Black Lives Matter. And there had been an effort going on for at least a couple of years to potentially organize Starbucks, put feelers out, coming off the heels of the organizing victory at Spot Coffee, Buffalo. And that was a local coffee chain that organized in Rochester and Buffalo in 2019, successfully organized all the stores. So workers at Starbucks at that point had reached out and had been in contact for a couple of years with organizers from Spot. And, I think about the time I was brought in, the effort seemed to have been starting in earnest to really kind of try to make connections with baristas across Buffalo and bring them into the organizing process and see if it had a shot of, trying to organize as many stores as possible in Buffalo. And, obviously we've had even more success than that. The original scope of the campaign was just like, let's organize some stores in Buffalo to support these Spot coffee chains, which, they're direct competitors, Starbucks. So, I think from the union's perspective, it was like, we're trying to shore up this like newly unionized business and make sure that, conditions are kind of standard across the industry. And, obviously it's gone much bigger than that.
You mentioned a few of the organizations, and one is, Pat, you've been involved with DSA recently. Are you a member of DSA as well, Brian?
Yeah, I'm a member of DSA and recently was just elected to the labor steering committee at DSA.
You mentioned a bunch of organizations that are supporting their drive. Are you organizing with any major labor unions as far as helping you bargain contracts? Is it spread out, or is it are you working with one major federation?
Yeah, so this is all going through Workers United, an affiliate of SEIU. They're the union that's been backing financially, especially our legal cases, to bring this to elections at stores across the country. So yeah, it's a single union that's leading this effort right now and has actually been really great about giving us, fronting workers' autonomy and, having workers in the front of, not just organizing, but, at bargaining, it's only workers that sit in at bargaining for Workers United. So, it is a very worker-centered process that I've seen played out and that we've advocated for as much as possible, in our drive.
So what's the state of the drive in your workplace right now? You've made some attempts at organizing. Have you had any votes? Has there been any outcomes yet, or what's going on in your workplace?
Yeah, I think we tried to launch after we went public at the end of August. I thought, I might have a good chance at launching my workplace. And I think, with a lot of organizing, you never know. It's always a coin flip, especially you'll map your workplace. You'll have an idea of where people could stand, and then, things kind of fall apart. At least in my workplace, I couldn't get a committee together that, met all the different shifts and kind of had those connections with everyone. So after, our campaign stalled and it still hasn't, petitioned for an election at my store, I kind of pivoted to supporting, local efforts and then more so to national efforts. We've gone through all the union busting that all the other stores have gone through, up to a point, because Starbucks ran a whole market anti-union campaign, with the captive audience meetings to, flooding the store with managers to, watch workers on the floor. We had some very outspoken workers at my store, even though we didn't petition. So Starbucks put a lot of pressure, had Roxanne show up, almost weekly, the president of Starbucks North America, to come in and check on us. And Yeah, so we've been through a lot, even though we haven't petitioned at my store.
The head of Starbucks America, not the CEO, but that sounds like a pretty important person to have.
I believe she's head of HR, head of operations in all of North America, and
Oh.
she's probably third or fourth in charge of the company. I don't know exactly where it shakes out, but she's one of the highest executives. Yeah, I mean, she's in charge of.
Shareholders should know that they're paying high-paid executives to watch people make coffee.
Oh yeah, no,
That's what
it's
it's about.
ridiculous. Yeah, it's. I mean, we've
Mm-mm.
had at least about 100 managers probably sent out here from around the country, and these people, their moves, their transportation, vehicles, fully paid for. I believe they're promised bonus at the end of this, along with major promotions that they've been waiting for years. So, these people are very heavily incentivized to do whatever they can to try to bust our union and put their whole lives on hold to do so. So,
Mm.
I think it shows, we have people from like Colorado, from California, Seattle coming out here for months on end, like putting everything on hold their whole lives just to bust this union. Like they're pretty heavily incentivized to do so. I think, especially financially. So,
Seeing, baristas, it's a teamwork atmosphere. You really do work together, and I've always been impressed by your job. I mean, you're professionals, and it's not easy to do. I'm always impressed when I go, and I'll admit something here that I don't tell a lot of people, is because most lefties, hate that I like Starbucks coffee. I actually think it's pretty good coffee, and I do stop in every once in a while and get a cup. How do you address, a little bit of the tension that you may have? There's going to be some coworkers of yours that are on the side of management that don't want to pay union dues. They really are against the union. Maybe they're not sure and they don't want to be bothered. How have you tried to address like your coworkers that are just they're not into it for whatever reason?
yeah, I mean, we've had that, come up in my store, and there was some tension. I think, I guess the first thing to say is like we have a really good like camaraderie in my store overall. Like this is one of the first jobs I've had, especially coming from like social services, and then before that like construction and some distribution like center work, like where I've actually had relationships with workers outside of like my coworkers outside of work, where we're friends and we have a really good work dynamic. So I think even when tensions have flared and like management's really tried to press like scare tactics into workers about like the union and mobilize anti-union or people in the workplace who are anti-union to kind of like be more strident about like pressuring other coworkers to not join the union. I've really tried to rely on that, like first and foremost we're coworkers and we're friends, and trying to not increase tensions in the workplace, because it's a pretty classic anti-union tactic, is to make things as hostile as possible in the workplace and then blame it on the union and say, look, this is what the union's doing already, and they haven't even gotten in. Just imagine how much conflict there's going to be once the union's in. Vote no, and all this like conflict will go away, basically holding like the conditions of the workplace hostage contingent on voting no. And obviously it's not true. Like after the vote, you know things go back to normal. Vote yeah, either if you vote yes or no. So yeah, it's really like there's a lot of like psychological manipulation going on with union busting. And I think one of the main ones is like that those hostile work conditions that management creates, and also they try to foster conflicts between workers. So I think as much as you can like message to the middle in terms of like why you're forming a union, trying to have it be as inclusive as possible, and just kind of like keep those relationships with people even if you just like disagree with them about the union. I think all those things are really effective, and it still hasn't brought in the union at my store, but it's been very effective, at least like maintaining those relationships, because management really wants those broken as much as possible during a campaign, so that they can point to the union and blame it on them.
I gotta thank. Let me say that was overmodulated there. Try again. I got to thank my comrade Pat Fahy for setting this interview up and being the middleman. Pat, appreciate you, man. And I want you to jump in here, of course, and because you've been involved. You were involved with organizing drives, at IBEW. We were together, and I remember we tried a little bit of a militant political campaign back in the day. You got any questions for this young man who's braving the territory of organizing against corporate monsters?
Yeah, I mean, first I just want to say, he's doing a great job, and all these workers at Starbucks are doing a great job. They have like a call. I was on a call like about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was like a national call. There was lots of people on it. They're getting a lot of support, and Brian and other people. There was a lot of really good people there, so it was really very inspiring. I've read that in some stores anyway. I mean, in other places where they're where they're organized as Starbucks, the customers have been pretty supportive of the drive. Has that been true up in Buffalo? Do you know?
Yeah, I think it definitely has. Even at my store, we have people ordering because you can order drinks through the app. There's a Starbucks app. You can mobile order, send an order in, and have it like pre-made for you. And customers and supporters have been putting like Union Yes, Union Strong,
Ah, cool.
in their orders. It's really cool to see. Even at my
Yeah.
store, where we haven't voted, like we have the local president of the UAW, order like a Union Strong drink because their office is, a block away from where my Starbucks is. So I see him, at least once a week, along with some other customers. I'll order Union Strong. So it's definitely been nice. This is, as much as it is like focused on the stores that are voting and filing, we're building a movement. And whether your store files or not, you can still be a part of that movement and still be engaged in like holding up those stores that are like filed for elections and voting or fighting right now for a contract. So it's really cool to be a part of and get that support wherever you are.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, I admit I go to Starbucks sometimes too because I like the coffee too. So I try to go to independent coffee shops too, but I do go to Starbucks too.
I mean, right now is a great excuse for people on the left to go to Starbucks and not feel guilty.
That's
So,
true.
hey,
There you go.
You go drop a union. I go with my union stuff on and say, yeah.
yeah,
There you go. It's definitely a guilty pleasure in my house. My wife and I both like Starbucks, so
Yeah.
but I'm and it's a little less guilty pleasure knowing that there's some organizing going on. Pat, like I said, is a member of our editorial board, and you too at home can become a member of our editorial board. You can go to our website, www.njrevolutionradio.com. It's like new journalism, revolutionradio.com, and click on the editorial board links and subscribe. Not only do you contribute, but you get to help us make shows and come on the air and do neat things with Revolution Radio. So we appreciate it. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back after this message from one other of our editorial board members.
Hey, y'all, this is Darryl Lamont Jenkins from One People's Project, UnitedVox.com, and you are listening to Brian Powers on Revolution Radio.
And we're back. Thanks for joining us here. We're with Brian Murray and Pat Fahy. Brian is a Starbucks worker. He's been working to help organize not only his own shop, but shops around the country. And we thank him for joining us here today. And Pat, of course, a member of our editorial board. So let me ask, how are the organizing drives being directed? You have mentioned that you get on some phone calls and you do some committees. What's communications like between organizers working on these committees?
Yeah. So I think nationwide, I would say we probably have 4 or 5, maybe 5 or 6 professional organizers on the campaign, but mostly it's been worker to worker organizing. Like I said, I think at some point, this was never meant to be a nationwide campaign or intended to be. But as the momentum started to build in Buffalo, we had more and more workers from across the country reaching out, asking how can we replicate this? And I don't think any of us wanted to say no to anyone trying to organize as much as our initial plan was just to have it kind of be Buffalo centric. So it's really been what's spurred on this national campaign is just workers reaching out, especially after those 2 initial victories in Buffalo. It just exploded. Starting from Boston, Arizona to Boston, and then from there, pretty much the rest of the country. I think we're over 80 stores now. I'll have to double check in 28 or 29 states, including even Hawaii. We just launched a store. So it's been pretty exciting. Yeah. To see that grow. And that organizing effort is led mostly by workers. We'll have our leads come through the email, people reaching out, and then, we'll hop on a Zoom call and just basically kind of go through the basics of how we organize in our stores and kind of what to expect, and just do kind of constant check-ins and help them launch their campaign, and then connect them, have community support and resources, send out the cards and the pins. So yeah, it's been really worker driven. I mean, even when there are the professional organizers involved, it's always a worker from Buffalo or Boston or somewhere or Arizona that has already gone through most of the process, helping to lead that. So
What kind of commitment are you seeing, not just from yourself, but from the other organizers, as far as, I guess, how much time are you putting in, And what kinds of things are people doing on the ground? Are you doing door knocking? Are you doing house visits, or is it mostly done online? What is what is it? What is an organizer committing to these days in this new
Yeah.
world?
I think, early on in the campaign, we decided not to do house calls, which goes contrary to especially our organizer who helped us get this off the ground, Richard Bensinger's kind of careers. I don't think he's ever run a campaign that hasn't done house calls. But
Yeah,
we just,
I'm a strong advocate for them myself. Yeah.
I think it is. I think it's great. And I mean, this is my first experience organizing, so it sounds like it's great. Coming from that social services background, like if you really want to build a relationship and rapport, it's like that the face-to-face interaction is invaluable. But we decided because of COVID and how we've seen other campaigns recently that have tried to do house calls, like get hit pretty hard over COVID concerns and health concerns, and companies leveraging that against the union. We decided to stick strictly to Zoom for our calls, especially around the country, and just connecting with coworkers, like at work or outside of work, but not explicitly doing house calls. So that's been interesting. Like the commitment looks like it varies week to week. I mean, it could be trying to delegate interviews, trying to like talk to committee members. I mean, there's like a couple group chats I'm a part of different like workers around the country trying to organize. So just like trying to answer questions and kind of get updates. I mean, it varies. It could be a lot, like especially during leading up to the elections. The first ones we had in Buffalo, I think I was working like 30 hours outside of work, if not more, like trying to help with the campaign, getting signs out there. We did a whole canvassing effort to get signs around like the Elmwood store that was voting. So like that, we did do door knocking there, and like just knock on doors around that neighborhood and just try to get people to put signs out to show support for workers. So yeah, it's been a lot and it keeps varying. There isn't a specific time commitment. So but it's especially right now, it's been increasingly more time given how many stores are filing and how many people want to talk to us and speak about like how do you organize.
So I worked for a major labor union for a few years, and I remember we were doing internal organizing, and people recoiled at the idea of doing house visits. Now this was pre-COVID, but they're the most effective way of talking to people. It really is, and I think that the anxiety just comes from not having done it a lot or not being accustomed to it. What I found funny, and I won't name the major labor union that I worked for, but I always found it funny that there was never a problem telling people they had to go knock on doors when politicians were running for office. And I found, and when I threw that in their face, I got fired. So I'm just saying that, I mean, it's if it's effective for politicians, and I've done door knocking for electoral reasons. I've done, environmental issues and nonprofit work. And I've done door knocking when I organized, at the 827 and with Comcast workers. It's done because it's extremely effective. And, I guess, I understand the COVID concerns, but those are the world seems to be getting more relaxed as we go on. And since we're three organizers here, I thought maybe, I don't know, Pat, how he feels about knocking on doors, but I always, it's just kind of get past the first one and the anxiety of doing the first one. And then you just start going door to door, and that's it. It becomes the day,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's a good way. I mean, especially if you're organizing a union, particularly, you want to be able to talk to people openly. You know what I mean? So it is good. But I mean, with COVID has changed everything the last couple of years. So I can understand how that would change your strategy certainly too. But yeah, door knocking is definitely a good, it's a good thing. It's time consuming. You got, but once you get rolling, it's, you can enjoy it too. You meet a lot of interesting people, and you find out that people are very complicated, and they don't fit into these kind of like, preconceived marketing notions that we get from TV and the politicians and the media, and all that stuff. So it's good. It's a good experience for the organizer and the people who you're talking to. So,
Yeah, definitely.
You knocked on community doors, so you can kind of run into anything when you do that kind of door knocking. So that makes it a little more interesting, than knocking on the door of And when you're doing like some get out the vote stuff, you have a list, so you're maybe doing knocking on friendly doors, and you're not gonna
But straight up knocking on the doors in the community, you wind up knocking on some interesting people's doors, and I'm sure everybody's got a little. Do you have any stories of knocking on somebody's door that was?
The community one, it was mostly like after work, so it was hard to get a lot of people. We got some decent support, and nothing crazy. I did door knocking for the India Walton campaign too. Our union endorsed India Walton, our organizing committee out here.
Oh boy!
So I had more interesting ones where I was going through the more affluent neighborhoods in Buffalo and got called a communist, and people, it's just kind of funny. I don't know, for whatever reason, when I got the list for canvassing for that campaign, I would just get the richest districts in Buffalo. So,
oh my goodness,
I had pretty much no positive reception, and was just yelled at a lot. I don't know. There was a lot of stuff made about her getting a parking ticket and getting her car towed, and people were just really upset about that and kind of yelling at me, trying to, I don't know, get me to give like a really negative response or like get aggressive. But I think just being nice, just kind of being disarming when you're talking to people like that, and just being like, oh, thank you for your time. I appreciate you sharing that with me. And just having them be the aggressor as much as possible, and them walking away, I don't know, was kind of effective. People just kind of back down after a while.
It's almost as if a large, aggressive, powerful organization had gaslit an entire community.
Yeah. Oh yeah, very effective. Kind of like narratives they built against India, using a lot of like these controlling images around like her being like either like a welfare queen or an angry black woman, or kind of like playing on all these different like racist tropes. And coming from like a mayor who he himself is black. It was really interesting to see that.
I was about to clarify my own memory on that. I thought that he was African American. Let me ask you about being an organizer and committing to something like this, and it's hard in a 1 hour interview to really get into the impact it has on your daily life. It can be stressful. You're taking on a very powerful corporation, like you said. They start to play mind games. I've seen friends turn on friends during organizing drives, and some kind of ugly stuff that will at times make you think it's not worth it. And we've all been there. I mean, I've been there involved in organizing drives. It's like, oh God, what are we doing? It's a big mess here. How have you been able to cope with a little bit of that stress? And are you able to get your head out of the game? Do you have a hobby? Like, how do you deal with the pressures of organizing?
Yeah, I think it's been tough. I think especially after we launched, my store fell apart. Like the organizing effort, my committee, some people backed out, and that was really kind of heartbreaking because I'd been talking to a lot of people at my store for a little while, about it, and thought I had something. So I don't know. It's kind of always just regrouping and moving forward. At least in the aspect like when you are organizing, you have those like setbacks. Just continuing to push forward and kind of I guess just not throwing in the towel and taking, what opportunities come up next, so I pivoted when my store didn't want to go forward with a union campaign. Like I pivoted to solidarity and support for the stores that were, and that was tough. It was kind of like a hard, kind of pill to swallow, being like, yeah, my store doesn't want to organize, and that's the case. I think a lot of organizing, doesn't get off the ground. And as successful as this campaign has been, it's, still a battle to, get these stores to file. I think, I don't know, taking care of myself. I'm trying, I like play guitar a little bit, not well, but I try to do that. I don't know, like listen to music, read books, see friends, just kind of some stuff. But I don't know, being busy is nice. Like, I don't know. I feel like I've just been trying to stay as busy as possible. So that's kind of,
having a therapist has helped me.
Yeah, I probably.
I'm just saying.
No,
I mean, it is difficult, I think, for somebody who has a great passion to be around people that don't really share that great passion, and it's hard to accept, but you have to. And I think one of the things, and I learned this in therapy and from other organizers, really good organizers, that you can't change other people. You have to look at yourself, and you have to think about what you're doing, to attract attention and respect from coworkers and stuff like that, and just try to focus on, you're staying with the cause, and you're learning. I'm guessing you're a fairly young man as compared to myself. I didn't ask you how old you were, but
I'm 27. Yeah.
27. Okay, all right. So yeah, you look a little younger, and that's a good thing, man.
I know, I get that a lot. I think most of my coworkers thought it was
That's a good
18 or 19 when I came in for about a month. So
perfect.
yeah, got
Perfect.
the whole baby face thing going on.
But you definitely, you learn that you can't get too frustrated, because frustration just doesn't bear good organizing. You become, less of a communicator when you're frustrated and upset. So I'm rooting for you, and I appreciate that. Let's talk about now what's going on a little bit nationally, because you put your attention there. In the news, I think within the last 3 days, there was some mention of Memphis Starbucks workers being terminated. I think 7 of them. Supposedly, they had some people in the store. It was maybe after hours or something like that. And that's the accusation. Of course, I haven't talked to anybody there. I don't bear witness. So, I'm talking completely out of my butt here. We don't want to say anything that could, make their terminations worse. So we got to add that in there. That, I haven't spoken with any of them. What do you know of the situation that you can say right now? And is this something that you've come to expect from Starbucks, or is this a surprise? This is a lot. They fired 7 people, right?
Yeah, they fired 7 people, and they used, I think, the inciting incident of having a news crew come into the store. I think they came of their own volition, from my understanding, the news crew, and potentially had left right around closing. But the fact that the news crew was there and kind of done this story, Starbucks used as cover to start an investigation, and then throw a ton of BS reasons why those workers were fired. Is everything from you were on your break and you had your mask off and you were kind of like walking around eating, to you went to the back after hours to check your schedule, which is allowed. I mean, that's like closing the safe for someone when you're shift, and you do have those abilities to do so, but you weren't the specific point person for it. So stuff that technically isn't allowed, but operate in the reality of running a store day to day, these are all things that happen. And so they just found whatever, quote unquote, improprieties they could for these workers to justify firing them, and it's not really about how they got away with it, what their reasons were. It's why. And it was clearly because these were some very strident and successful organizers out in Memphis, and we believe that these firings were because of union activity, and we're pursuing charges with the NLRB to get these workers their jobs back. So there's been a pretty amazing amount of public support in Memphis. This is the city where Dr. King died, fighting for the sanitation workers union. This is a city with some incredible history of the labor movement. I mean, it's one of the sites of some major events around the labor movement. So we've seen a lot of support, and there'll be more forthcoming on how we're going to publicly push Starbucks to reinstate these workers, and do the right thing, because it hasn't been successful. I think in the past couple of days we've launched another 10 or 15 stores, from Pittsburgh to the Twin Cities to Hawaii, and it really hasn't scared anyone. It hasn't had the cooling effect I think they hoped it would on workers. I think it's really energized us and showed people why they need a union at Starbucks, because if people just speaking up for their basic rights to free association and have a union are going to be terminated, it shows that this could be me for another reason. Because I think if workers actually look at the reasons that they fired these workers for, these are things that they'd have to fire so many workers if these were actually uniformly enforced things. These are minor infractions that you would get your manager to talk to you about, and be like, hey, just don't do that. These aren't things you would instantly terminate someone for.
Yeah. Pat, have you seen retaliation like this over the years in your experience?
I mean, I've heard
7 workers is a lot.
I haven't actually seen it with my own 2 eyes, at a workplace where I worked, but I've heard about stuff like this. This is blatant union busting. I mean, it's just so it's like put a neon sign up, we're busting the union over here. Hopefully the NLRB usually doesn't have much teeth, but maybe in this case, they will, because it's so, it's so over the top. I mean, 7 workers, and they were all involved in a union. I mean,
these are the leaders of the committee. These aren't just, they just picked 7 random workers. No, these are all the most active leaders in that store. So, You have, it's ridiculous. Like this was definitely meant to cool off like organizing and try to disincentivize others from organizing. From like our perspective, it was pretty clear cut, kind of what's going on. At Starbucks, from, all of their union busting that they've done across the country has never acknowledged like, we're doing this because we don't want a union. They've been saying they'll come up with whatever reason, like, oh, we have Ross-Ann and 100 managers out in Buffalo because Buffalo has these issues that no other market has, and we have to like fix things. We're here to help because workers raise their hand and ask for help, which is their interpretation of us trying to build democracy in the workplace and form our union. So you can't trust anything Starbucks says because they just haven't been honest at all. Like at least with like Amazon or Walmart, we don't want a union and we're fighting to stop you from getting a union. Starbucks has told us they want us to vote no, but they've refused to admit like overall like what the campaign that they're actually running. So
looking, and I know there's been some hay about the PRO Act and but the way labor law kind of works from the Wagner Act has been downhill, and even many would argue that the Wagner Act only screwed up union labor more than anything it legitimized it and allowed kind of this control. And having, I've been through a couple arbitrations now personally. I've represented workers going into arbitration and seeing, the NLRB, and Pat had mentioned this. It really is toothless, and unfortunately, when the best you can do is get somebody their job back at a place that clearly wants them fired and make them miserable, it's the scale is so far tipped in the employer's favor that even justice through that system isn't even remotely close to justice. I mean, when you lose your job, it can be devastating. And to maybe get your job back in a few months after all that damage has already been done, it is not exactly compensation in my mind. And that's about the best the NLRB can do. And even looking, on the other side, when you file unfair labor practice charges and things like that, you're talking about like $10,000 fines. Elon Musk just had to pay like a $10,000 or $20,000 fine. Dude's got that in the ashtray of his car. He doesn't care about these fines, and I think that to really help you. And I know there's always the political involvement of unions, but I think they really got to go way beyond what they think the PRO Act would do, and that's not going to pass anyway because they trust the Democrats to do it.
Yeah. Well, like our strategy,
that's what happens.
Yeah, we're not like leaning on the NLRB as our main strategy around like getting these workers, reinstated and fighting for our union to be recognized. It's really going to be a massive public pressure campaign that we're hoping to continue to build that, forces Starbucks to come to the table and, not just recognize the right to organize, but also, bargain in good faith and actually get contracts that, equitably take some of the massive revenue and the profits that they have. I mean, they have billions in liquid capital because of their app alone, which now functions as like a quasi bank, where people want their free drinks through Starbucks through the app. So they'll put, hundreds of dollars into their app, and that's just a free loan you're giving to Starbucks. So Starbucks has a ton of capital right now that, could be invested, in their workers and their workforce to make this job, both well paying and also as function as well as possible, but clearly they want to do they want to do like stock buybacks. They want to give Kevin Johnson our $20 million bonus and other executives like high levels of compensation. But unless we get this union, unless we really put the pressure on them to actually pony up some real money for workers who make those profits, we're not going to see it, and we're not going to see the remedies we get from the NLRB actually meeting what we need to win this union. So, it's a process. We're going to go through it. We're going to make sure we take every avenue we have to support and protect workers. But yeah, the NLRB isn't going to be the main focus of our strategy in terms of, winning this. So
there could be a lot more help from the federal government, who claims that their policy officially as the federal government is to support the unionization of our workforce. I mean, it's right there in the Wagner Act, and I try to mention that every time I have organizers around, because there's this pushback from politicians, and if any of them happen to listen to the show, you should maybe read the Wagner Act, because the first sentence says it is the official policy of the United States to support union labor. And I've never seen more hypocrisy than the way the United States supports union labor, because they put together feckless NLRBs and right to work legislation and all kinds of other things to stand in the way of the organizing of workplaces. And it's contrary to what the law is supposed to be. And the spirit of the law isn't met today, by whatever we tell you. And that's why you have to say, listen, we're not going to rely on the NLRB. We're not going to rely on politicians. And I'll say it's because they're worthless. They're not helping workers. So, and that's my comments on that.
Yeah, I
as
think
far
it's
as
gonna. I just wanted to comment.
go ahead, go.
I think it's going to take, like a mass rank and file workers movement to change any of the laws that we have. We're not going to do it through supporting Democratic Party politicians. If we look at how, these labor laws were created, it was because, there was a mass movement in the 30s. There was mass movement. For a long time before that too, but there was a mass movement of workers that were, organizing at the shop level, and they just kind of they forced them. I think, and part of it was to kind of control it, but also they needed to also give them some rights. But so it's complicated at the history of that. But I think that's the only way we're going to be able to do it. So we can't rely on the courts or the or the politicians to reinvigorate the labor movement to the status it was at one time in this country. Which we need to do, to make changes. We need to do that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, unions, instead of putting a lot of resources into legislation or, political efforts, like really prioritizing organizing, like you said, and like actually getting more and more workers into the labor movement. That's the thing that's actually going to win legislation. That's the thing that's going to force like politicians to actually make real concessions in organizing. I think putting all our eggs in one basket of like, oh, we passed the PRO Act and then we could have a labor movement again, that's not going to happen. We're not going to have the power to even bring that to bear, and it'll happen as a consequence of us effectively organizing more and more workplaces, because like you said, they're going to want a piece of it. They're going to want to like have some parameters on it, so yeah.
I think I think that's going to be part of this next generation of organizer, which I'm kind of caught in the middle of. I'm 45, so I'm not young and I'm not middle aged. I'm just kind of in the middle of these generations. But I think the older generation kind of came up under Reagan's unions, and this is how they've been taught to be unions. And I think when you look at the older generation of union leadership, and Pat, of course, is not included in this model, talking about the more mainstream of it. No, I would never bring my good comrade into that conversation. But like they were taught to kind of be submissive to the Democratic Party because it was side with them against Reagan, or you had nobody. And I think that the new generation, the younger people, recognize the problems with that kind of program and recognize that it's led to decreases in unionization, increases in right to work, and other stuff. So I applaud you for that attitude, and I do. And I know that it's rubbing off. I know I've seen it in a lot of new organizers, and I hear it, and I know I'm not the only one saying it out there. And I'm grateful, for unions that are starting to turn it around and starting to recognize that your money is much better spent in organizing workplaces, in representing your current membership, in doing things that make people talk good about union labor, and taking away that argument that all we do is support politicians, because quite frankly, that's a legit complaint. And I think a lot of unions blow it off because, we represent workers. No, it's a legit complaint, and I've seen it firsthand. So I'm grateful to organizers that are bringing that up and forcing people. SEIU is backing this effort, but they also back a lot of political. So, and I know that they wouldn't be doing that if it wasn't for guys like you stepping up in the workplace. So, thanks for that. I want to ask you how people can help. I know there's a GoFundMe for some of the fired workers out there. We will link to that on our website. That's included with this post. So those of you listening on your apps, your podcast apps, you can go to www.njrevolutionradio.com, and the article will be up. I'll put the links to the GoFundMe there. But how else can people support, Starbucks workers out there trying to organize, or maybe get some going in their own shop if they're hearing this?
Yeah. If you're a Starbucks worker, please reach out to us. You can go find us at SB Workers United on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, anything like that. And we'll have our email address. Send us an email if you're a Starbucks worker. We can help you get this process off the ground. That's really important. Especially for Starbucks workers, and want to see this happen. Like, we have the knowledge of so many amazing workers that can help you get this off the ground. I think for community members or supporters in general, going into stores that have petitioned, do have active campaigns going on, letting them know the community has their back. You can order that Union Strong coffee through the mobile app, or just if you go into the cafe and order a drink and have your name be like, Union Strong, like Jake or something, that's good too. We're not recommending, if you have a Starbucks that's not filed in your area, going in, trying to talk to workers and see if they're going to organize. We've seen Starbucks be extremely proactive with union busting. And, we have had stores where, community members have tried to do like really big shows of support to workers there to try to, encourage them to unionize. And Starbucks has come down hard. These are all like, every Starbucks right now in the country is potentially like a site of organizing. So, not having people kind of preemptively help, like try to get something off the ground. We're really trying to have, those committees kind of do a lot of internal work underground before they go public. So, not trying to blow anyone's cover, all these stores potentially could be organizing. So, letting those committees do that work. If you do know someone that works at Starbucks though, and you think they might be interested, give them our contact info, give them our email, have them reach out to us. But, just going into stores that are organizing and supporting workers, that are organizing across the country is one of the biggest things we can do, because it means a lot, like going into a store, tipping well, and then like, getting a Union Strong coffee at a store that's organizing, just to show you're not alone. I mean, it's hard. Like that's made my day a couple times. I've had, after having like Rosanne or like a corporate presence of like 4 or 5 people come in, stare at you like from across the room for a while, or, it's been really nice afterwards having like a community member come in and say, hey, I see your union pin, like congratulations on like fighting for this, that kind of stuff. It does mean a lot. And I think it does really boost morale in the stores. So.
Pat, do you have any questions before we wrap up, man?
Oh, Pat, you're muted.
Yeah, I think we covered pretty much everything that I wanted to talk about. Just like, again, I mean, what you guys are doing is great. I mean, you're really like, it's inspiring, and you're really leading the working class right now, and that's a cool place to be. So keep doing it.
We are, we're trying. I mean, the more people we bring in, the more worker organizers we have, that are cutting their teeth on this campaign, and hopefully. This inspires other workers across the service industry and across America, to actually organize. Hopefully by the end of this, we'll have thousands of workers that have experience in organizing a union and can bring that to, their friends, people in their community, and share that experience and help them kick off campaigns. So I think that'll be the real victory, is if, all these Starbucks that organize, once we win the right to organize and get their union, they can then be, potential places where people can just go and, walk into their local Starbucks and be like, hey, I want a union at my workplace. Like, how did you do it? And, you'll have like 10 organizers working at that store, at least, that can share that experience. So I think that'd be really cool. That would be like one of the things I'd love to see come out of this is, hey, you want a union, go to your local Starbucks. So
that's a great point. I mean, the fact that just having all these people with experience and other workers can just talk to like regular people, I mean, about organizing, that would be like, that's a huge leap forward, compared to the way it's been over the last 30, 40 years in the United States, for sure. So that's very insightful. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us. Brian is, from another Brian. By the way, if you don't know, this is how every conversation Brian and I have ever had when we've introduced somebody. Are you, you're Ryan? No, Brian. Oh, Brian with an I or an F, or I or a Y, right? That's how everybody, they always ask you if you have I or a Y in your name, and they always forget. I think I called you Ryan too.
Yeah, you did. That's fine now. I'll get
it. There you go. But thanks for joining us. Brian Murray from Starbucks Workers Union, being supported by Workers United and SEIU. Thank you very much for joining us. Pat Fahy from our editorial board. You all know where to go, www.njrevolutionradio.com. For this and more interviews, we'll be back soon with another special report. And like I said, if you want to join us, check out that editorial board. We could always use a little more support, some more ideas for podcasts, and you can even join me in producing if you want. Talk to you soon.